Christian beliefs were established within our own lives, separate before joining this band. But at the same time, like what you are and who you are is always going to shine through what you do.
They're just a band that has like a good concept of self and who they are and what they are and how they want to present themselves. And for them, that's what it's about.
It's very unfortunate when people won't listen to our music, and I know what kind of music they're into. I know they're into metal and metal very similar to ours, and they won't even really give it a shot because they heard that we're Christians.
It's a big part of who they are, but on the other hand, it's not that big a deal.
I think a lot of time, like, the press just focuses on, like, the surprise of, like, a Christian metal band. Like, it sounds so far-fetched.
There's just a lack of creativity when they're doing an interview or an article on the band, and all they can write about is, oh, well, this band is full of Christians. They're a Christian band. When,
in fact, they should be focusing on the music and what we are creating.
Before an album comes out, you send out these early promo copies to the big magazines and stuff. And I almost wanted to send out like a version of the CD that goes only to press that has this like intro song. And the intro song is not actually a song. It's basically me just rambling about nonsense, saying, you're probably not going to listen to this anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and just have like a full, 5 minutes of me babbling in the beginning of the CD so that we can actually see if they write about it, And I have a feeling that very few of those magazines would ever even notice that the entire first 5 minutes of the CD were just me making fun of them.
When they're constantly labeled a Christian metal band, it almost pins them in a hole that they don't necessarily deserve to be in.
I think once people get to know us, that they realize that, we're not Bible thumpers.
Yeah, we don't walk around the venues with Bibles and like hit people in the head with them or anything like that.
The message that we portray is less preaching and more of just like, reacting to like life experiences and describing how, spirituality, guides you through those experiences.
The message of this next song is very simple. We've all made mistakes, but we all deserve a second chance. This song is about forgiveness.
When Tim talks up there, he's talking about personal things sometimes, but in a sense he is representing all of us.
I don't want our listeners to feel like the only reason we're out here playing music is to push an agenda on them. Like, we love them genuinely as people, and we love the years that we spent with them on tour.
I think a common misconception, especially with some of the, non-Christian bands we tour with, is that, maybe they were going to be super judgmental.
There were a couple moments where bands were kind of like, Christian metal, like, it doesn't make sense.
We want to thank all of you guys for being here. We played here not too long ago. Anybody see us play before? We were here with Darkest Hour, Hymns Maroon. Did anybody see that show?
Some of our closest friends in the band Hymns told us after touring with us for a couple weeks that, we never wanted to tour with the Christian band because we always, thought of Christians in this one way, and you guys have shown us that not all Christians are the same, and the fact that we changed their perspective, really meant so much to us. We've become, great friends, and obviously they clearly still believe what they do.
We have so much in common. Like, why ignore that? Like, why ignore like all these things that we have similar, tastes and an interest in, and just focus on the one issue that we don't see eye to eye, and like just harbor ill will or just not be able to get along with that person. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
I remember getting tons of emails from kids that would say things like, oh, you guys call yourselves a Christian band, but you're out touring with Cannibal Corpse and Behemoth, and what does a non-Christian have in common with a Christian?
Just because you do a tour doesn't mean you're not a Christian. Like, that to me is stupid.
Naturally, from the other side, we get criticism like, oh, well, why would, these extreme metal bands be playing with As I Dying?
People are going to not like the fact you are a Christian. They're going to say you don't belong.
The true meaning of metal is Satan, like you can't really, like as if like we have no place within this genre of music.
And I don't care. I love making music. I will make music. I will continue to do that.
Obviously, both point of views I think are ridiculous.
Tim writes the majority of our lyrics, and he has, I think, a very logical approach to Christianity.
Along with being positive, and having the Christian tag, a lot of people just think we're like the average churchgoers who show up at church and think about these spiritual concepts and things that are just so lofty and up in the clouds but don't actually translate into real life. I think it's one of the biggest frustrations I have with modern religion is it's just this place where you show up once a week and you hear about spiritual formations or these nonsensical ways of viewing the world. But I think what matters and so important is, as a result of being given the grace we've been given, how we extend that to others.
But there's more to this band than just the exact notes that we're playing on the guitar and the beats that we're playing on the drums. This next song means a lot to me. It's an old one. It's about finding comfort, the only comfort I've ever had in my life. These next two songs actually go together. The first one is called Distance is Darkness, and the second is called Behind Your Eyes.
Unintentionally, each of our 3 albums on Metal Blade has had its own perspective lyrically that's kind of, I think, progressed naturally. And going back to For the Words Collapse, that album wasn't really me trying to make a statement to anybody else other than just dealing with things in my life and trying to make sense of them. So it would just range anywhere from forgiveness to the humility that I'm trying to deal with in my own life, and the loss of a close friend when I was very young. And it's very much like me just dealing with life and trying to figure it out on my own. And then the next album, Shadows of Security, I have a general understanding of how I have chosen to view life, and have taken some of those things from For the Words Collapse to try to live very humbly, and learning how to apply that to a greater area of life, and not just living strictly based on emotion, but extending sacrifice and commitment in the way that I interact with the world and people I love around me. And then An Ocean Between Us was almost an outward look. While it was never pointing the finger at any one person telling them how to live their life, it was me realizing that there needs to be a difference between what's important to me and what's important to the world in general. And that's why it is an ocean between us, because it's choosing not to live just by the standard of materialistic culture or or the dreams that have been handed down to us by society, but finding our own dreams, and along with that, influencing other parts of the world. And so it's very outward based compared to the earlier albums. And who knows where I'll go from here, but it seems that those 3 records naturally had a progression from very much introspective to trying to make a difference in the way that I live in society. Lyrically, I seem to get the most questions about songs from our new album, and particularly because a lot of the imagery that's used there, people don't know how to apply that imagery and what I'm referring to. So the most questioned songs would be Forsaken, and that song is actually about the oppressed and marginalized people in the world that we so easily turn our backs on and so easily forget about. And particularly, I had in mind so many of the orphans that are around the world that people see it almost as less important than their own children because they're not tied to them by blood. And so that's what Forsaken is about. The lyrics to Meaning and Tragedy are pretty straightforward. That it's taking the mistakes that we've made earlier in our lives, or the ways that we've grown up learning wrong ideas, especially from the generations before us, and taking that tragedy and turning it into meaning. A lot of people see it, actually completely the opposite. That I'm saying that life is all meaningless and worthless. And there is a certain element of my lyrics that are making a message like that, but it's making the point that so much of life is worthless, so that we could see that for what it is and then focus on something more meaningful. So I'm not as, depressing as some people might interpret me. One of the songs I get a lot of questions about is Comfort Betrays. It's probably one of the more angry or negative type emotions released through our lyrics. To me, that song reminds me that if there's things that you dislike about the world that you live in, or the friends that you've made, instead of sitting there and complaining, it's about taking action. And if people that don't take action are not only bad friends and not loyal, but they're cowards. And so that's on the negative side. There are some negative songs that we have, but I feel like even in the negative situations, it's important to point those out so that we can change and grow from that. There's a lot of our songs that can come across very hopeless. Empty Hearts, for instance, points out the hopelessness of the foundations we build in life, like these meaningless friendships that we make and this quest for success. And to me, success has nothing to do with these empty relationships that we build upon, and there's this strictly emotional and very temporal type of love. And so while the focus of Empty Hearts is the evil that exists, the ultimate outcome should be commitment and sacrifice and these much greater ways of building up our hearts. What